check if this is. Oh, it's working. It is working.
Get it to work, yeah.
It is working. Assalamu alaikum, Safi.
Wa alaikum salam.
I'm so glad, so proud to hear you out about your new translation of Quran.
Yes, sir.
In about 10 minutes, 15 minutes, can you tell me the essence of what you have written? What is your understanding of Quran? How can, as Americans, how can we relate with it?
Before I can tell you the essence of the Quran that I found after working for 6 years on this project, I have to tell you really how I got to this translation. It's a process. It's not something like, let's sit down and start the translation and open the Arabic original and start working on it. I had to go through a process. I revised and looked at and studied about 65 different translations of the Quran. And in total, I think there are like 212 English translation altogether. 65 latest translation. Some of them are done by Westerners, some are done by Muslims, dealt with the Quran, but some of them are written with antiquated language. Some missed today's tools of knowledge that are available to us. So in order for us to be able to really benefit from reading the Quran in its original language, we have to understand it as such and translate it in a modern English. So what I've done is and try to understand the Quran, understood every word that it says that's in it, and then I try to see it with modern eyes, with the 21st century eyes. I try to reflect that meaning and understanding in simple, easy to understand, easy to read English. This is this book that I have. It says the Quran, a contemporary understanding. So this contemporary understanding is supposed to reflect my understanding of the Quran as a 21st century citizen of the United States. Now, after I've done this translation, the original translation took me 5.5 years to complete. After I completed that translation, I had to think about what's the essence of that book. Everything has an essence, and the Quran must have an essence. So what's the essence? Basically, I found out that the simple, basic idea that the book is talking about over and over again is freedom. Is to come to God with free will. It's to come to God and submit without any pressure. This is why Islam means submission to God. If you come to God and submit with your free will, you're a Muslim. If you are under duress, God does not accept that submission. It has to be with your own free will. It has to be without any pressure. So freedom is the essence of the Quran.
Let me ask you this. Typically, any Muslim would ask you, what authority do you have to say that the translation you have done, you have the authority to do that translation?
Yes.
How would you answer to
Sure.
Muslims?
Actually, I've been asked this question outside the United States. Basically, Muslims, professors, Muslims, deans of Islamic study colleges would come to me and say, did you graduate from a college that teaches Islamic studies? I say, no, I'm a businessman. Well, what gave you the authority to do this translation? I say, I'm American. And in the United States, we have a constitution. And the First Amendment of that Constitution gives me the right to think freely, to express myself freely, to meet with others and discuss things freely. And you ought to try it for yourself sometimes. It might help you understand why we cherish the Constitution we have in the United States. I don't need any other authority. Prophet Muhammad gave me the right to think freely. The Quran, in the Quran, God tells me many times, don't you think? Don't you reflect? In other words, use the brain I gave you. I used it. That's all there is to it. Now, maybe I made some mistakes. So what? Let other people write articles trying to correct me. I have an open mind. I'm willing to correct anything people can convince me that is wrong.
What makes you think that the translation you have will serve Islam and Muslims, and how does that fit in with living with people that God has created in different communities, different nations, and different faiths?
First of all, this translation is made for my grandchildren in the United States. It is designed with a particular audience in mind, which is young Americans. So other people can benefit from it. For instance, any English-speaking nation, like in India, Pakistan, other people can benefit from it. But the target audience is United States youngsters, people here in the United States. And I think they all, Muslim and non-Muslim, will benefit from it because we're basically their neighbors. The more they understand us, the less they fear us. And less fear means we live together in peace. We need, based on this Quran, to cooperate and work and build the nation we live in.
Let me ask you this. Most of the translations of the Quran, traditional people of other faiths, whether they are Christian, Jews, Hindus, or Buddhists, cannot relate with it the way it is written. How can, let's say, for example, Christians, if a Christian will read your translation of the Quran, how can he understand, how can he relate with it?
Well, to start with, this translation, the way I understood the Quran, it tells me to love Christians and Jews. It tells me to be an exemplary in my behavior toward others in order to show the values that I carry based on this book. So if I am trying to present my understanding as a good citizen, someone that respects himself and respects others, that love his neighbors, then his neighbors will take notice. His neighbors will start loving him. Other translations were mostly xenophobic, prepared in societies that thought that Muslims are the only saved people that will go to heaven, while Christians and Jews will go to hell. My understanding of the Quran is totally the opposite. I wouldn't be the judge of anybody. If anybody is going to judge anybody, it'll be God. So my job is to be the best person I can be, to be the example to others, and then let others live their faith too. This Quran, it says that God created us as people and tribes in order to compete in what's good. So let's all compete in serving the United States of America to build a great country here on earth.
I fully understand that. In fact, there are several verses where God clearly addresses whether you are a Jew or a Christian, you need not worry as long as you take care of your fellow beings.
Exactly.
But my question to you earlier was, if I'm a Christian reading your book, Quran, the verses, some of the references are different because of the cultural nature. But how do I relate? Is there something in the book that as a Christian I can look, something in Bible comparable in Quran, that way I will understand it better?
Yes, indeed. Actually, the Quran, see, God in the Quran is the word of God as far as I'm concerned. God in the Quran is urging me and was urging Prophet Muhammad before me to go and look at the books of other people, the books of the Jews and the Christians, and consider them always as neighbors and friends. Now, if those people come to read my book today with all the historical baggage that we all carry with us, that's fine. They will find here that we are urged in this Quran to cooperate and work together. Give you an example. In our Fatiha, God, we are praying.
That is the first chapter.
First chapter of the Quran. It's the opening. We are asking God that guide us to the straight path, the path other than those who He is angry with, or the path who are misguided. Other translation translate those that He is angry with to be the Jews, and those that are misguided as the Christians. I submit that God's vocabulary is very wide. If He wanted to say Jews, He would have said Jews. Aren't they Muslims that He is angry with? Of course they are. Aren't they Muslims that are misguided? Of course they are. So I don't think God was talking about neither Jews nor Christians.
And by the way, that is the only two translations that have been mistranslated. One was by Hilali Khan and the other one was done in 1142 AD which put it as Jews and Christians. In Arabic, it doesn't exist.
In Arabic, it doesn't exist. I'm translating the Quran. I'm not carrying past traditions. I'm not limited to what classical translations have said. I'm translating what I read and understand. And my mother tongue is Arabic. I speak English, I think, good enough to be able to translate, and I did not do the translation alone. I had teams of people that helped me in it. We wanted the translation to be best based on the eyes of a 21st century citizen, based on the tool of knowledge that's available to us today, not based on books of tradition that are already ineffective because their time has passed. In their time, they were great. Today, I'm sorry to say, we need new translations.
Indeed, I gave a presentation about that chapter, verse 7 of Surah Fatiha, at the Parliament of World Religions in Melbourne, Australia. We had a huge audience, including Iranian and Saudi clerics. At the very end, I'm giving the bottom line. I put the verse on the PowerPoint. The whole people were watching. I asked a question. Is there anybody here who can read Arabic but not a Muslim? Guess who stood up? The Bishop of Jerusalem, Christian bishop. He said, I will read it. He read it, and I asked him, is there any reference to Jews and Christians? He said no. And all of a sudden, the entire audience were shocked to see that they have read in the translation that Jews and Christians, as you mentioned, but it is not in the Arabic. It was a revelation to thousands of people sitting there. You and I have to take this further.
Absolutely. And you refer to the Hilali and Khan translation. It's called the Noble Quran. I really advise people to stay away from that translation. And if they have it at this time, I advise them to get rid of it. It's not really a good translation.
I'm in tune with you. Safi, you also mentioned that the Quran translation you have has got in biblical verses.
Oh yes. Actually, this is my second book. The first book was only a translation. This particular book has 3,000 references from the Bible. Anytime I saw a verse from the Quran, and
upside down.
Yes, anytime I saw a verse from the Quran, and I saw a similar verse in meaning from the Bible, I added it as a reference. So you have the verses of the Quran and the similar verses from the Bible that have the same meaning. They're all mentioned over here, so we can use this book as a bridge for reconciliation. People can take it to church and have interfaith meetings based on this and compare what the Quran says to what the Bible says. I always held one idea, Mike. God does not change his mind. He sent us revelations to help us live together in peace. And this is basically what his revelations are all about. If this book urge people to fight, that means their understanding of the book is wrong. Doesn't mean the book is wrong. It means their understanding of this book is wrong. They have to read again, look for the right meaning, and understand it's a book for peace. This is what it is. When you understand it without bias, you will find that you can survive with your neighbor in peace here. It's not about war, it's about peace.
In fact, in the conference we held about Quran, one of the formulas that we created, well, we didn't create it, was there, was ask people who have difficulty understanding a verse to read three verses before
and three afterwards. It's basic.
Yes.
It's basic. Everybody that's reading a verse of the Quran and having any difficulty of understanding it need to read 3 verses before, 3 verses after. Better yet, you can take the word that you don't understand, the word you have a suspicion whether you understand it correctly or not, and compare it to other verses of the Quran that has the same word, and see how God used it under various circumstances, and then you'll come out with a result. There's no way that you won't understand it. This Quran is revealed by the creator of a human being who knows how their ability to understand, for everybody to understand. So there is no such thing as it's so difficult you can't understand it. No, it's easy to understand if you want to understand. That's simple.
In fact, Karen Armstrong has said very same thing. She said, if there is a verse that is bothering you, how can God say something like this? She said, keep reading, keep reading. It is your understanding that is flawed. Read enough times, then you'll get the whole picture. And then you say, gee, I misunderstood this. And that is the way it is. And God willing, Safi, this work you have done is amazing work. And I'm going to read this book personally, and I'm going to write a review about it and post it. And hopefully I urge fellow Americans, fellow Muslims to hold conferences, talk about your presentation.
Thank you.
Let them understand the wisdom of Quran that is there to create better societies for every human being.
Thank you. Mike, I'm mostly interested in American Muslims. Muslims in general are fine. I'm interested in them. They're my brother and sisters. But I'm mostly interested, as an American, in American Muslims. I really believe, because of the freedom that's afforded to us here, based on our Constitution, that if we work together with evangelicals, I've been working with them for 15 years, if we work together, we can produce an example that the world can follow. Muslims and Christians working together, living together. We have the same values. We have the same definition of a family. We have the same respect for the institution of marriage. We have a lot of things in common. We are against abortion. The Quran teaches against abortion. We have many values that we share together. We need to work together. I don't understand why we are perceived as enemies in the United States. Now, we both condemn ISIS. We both condemn extremism. We need to work together in order to produce peace here at home. Then we can build peace together for the rest of the world.
If you take me. Friends, the reason Safi and I are talking about Christianity and Islam, because together we form more than half of the world. It is obligatory on both Christians and Muslims to create a better world for all of us. And that is the reason we are referencing. Of course, as a person, as a pluralist, and a person of strong interfaith tradition, I would want all religions be mentioned. But here we are mentioning because the responsibility always squarely falls on the shoulders of the majority of any group, any people, and that is Muslims and Christians together have to come together to create a better world, remove these misunderstandings, and this is a great opportunity to look into this copy of the Quran. It has got 3,000 verses of Bible as references, and you can understand it from a common sense point of view. And this will be posted at thegaussdiary.com. Thegaussdiary.com, it will go on the YouTube, and you can always log into Mike Gauss at the website. There are 12 million people who have visited my Google profile, and it will go there as well. I want as many people to read this as you can, and then open your hearts and minds to fellow humans and create a better world for everyone. Thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum. May you be showered in peace, soaked in peace, drenched in peace. Thank you.